Okay, so this class is on the supply and demand analysis and price versus time. So we're going to go over all the details. The first thing I want you to see is what the supply and demand analysis looks like. So the purpose of this, it's going to apply to all your clients. So it doesn't matter if you're representing a buyer. This will help you educate them on what the market's doing in the area that they're looking to buy a house. If you're going on a listing appointment, this is the other half of the story in helping your seller identify what the market value is. The other half is comparables. But supply and demand is going to tell you where you fall in line with those comparables. Okay. I would even have this at an open house. So when somebody comes through and asks, well, how's the market? What's a typical agent response? Oh, it's great. Well, that doesn't tell anybody anything, right? In fact, you don't sound very intelligent when you say the market's great. How do you know it's great? How are you defining that? Okay, so when you have data that you can actually show somebody and you can explain what you're saying, then it carries more weight. So they're more apt to buy into what you're saying and trust you as an advisor that you actually know what you're talking about. Okay, so I would never represent a buyer and have them write an offer before looking at supply and demand for the area they're looking to buy. And I sure as heck would never show up to a listing appointment without this information. Okay. Again, comparables are just half the story. That just tells you what's available for sale, what's your competition, what's sold, which is historical data, but what's actually happening with the market. What's the movement like? Okay. So as we get into this, it'll become more clear of what I'm saying. But let's say, for instance, this is just an example, this market trend analysis here. Let's take this market area. So what we want to do is we want to take the geographical area that your buyer is looking in or that your seller's listing is in. Okay. And then we want to break up the market into price point, because that's what buyers search by first and foremost, is price, right? And then what can I get within that price range? So we want to break down the market area into price brackets, typically $25,000 increments. Okay. Now, once you get above 350,000, then I would start to use $50,000 increments. Okay. Once you get above $1 million, you probably want to use $250,000 increments. Follow me? So the amount of the increments is largely going to be determined by what is your market area. For most of the properties that we'll be doing, it's going to be about $25,000 increments. Again, up to 350, and then at 350 you're going to start going 50,000 increments. Okay. All right. Just another explanation here. If you'll notice, the first price point is 200,000 to 224,999. Okay, so we're dollars short there. That's on purpose and by design, and you need to do it that way. Here's why. So this first bracket here, let's say you have a property. Let's say you went from 200 to 225,000. And then the next bracket you have 225 to 250. Okay. Well, what happens if you have a property priced at 225? You're going to count it both times. So we got to cut it off somewhere. So we're going to cut it $1 short for that section. Okay. Now, when you get to the highest price of your last bracket, then you'll go to that highest dollar. Does that make sense? Am I communicating that? Okay. All right. So what this analysis is going to illustrate to us is we're going to look at how many houses are available, the active, how many are under contract. We're going to do a little math equation I'll share with you. It gives us a ratio. If we look over here on the far right, we have a legend, and that tells us, based on our percentage, the ratio, what kind of market is it. Okay. We want to look at the DOM, which is days on market. That's the average days on market for all of the properties in that price point. Okay. Again, we're going to identify what market it is, average square footage of those properties. And then we're also going to break down the active days on market, how long were they on the market, and the pending, how long were they on the market before they received an offer. So we're going to break those down here with ADOM, which is active days on market, and PDOM, which is pending days on market. Really complicated stuff, yeah? Okay. All right. So that's what the analysis is going to look like in large by the time we're done with it. The bottom portion here, absorption rate, this just tells us if no new inventory came onto the market, how long would it take the current demand to absorb all of the inventory. Okay. So we have the same numbers from up here for the price range, active and pending. We'll just copy and paste those down here, do another math equation, and that'll give us months of supply. which is this number here. And if we look over to the far right, that's our legend that tells us what kind of market it is. Okay. And then we also break down the months of supply into days of supply. Some people, it just resonates more with if they can see days versus months. So we have both. Okay. All right, so that's the supply and demand analysis, what it looks like. So now we're going to go into how to pull that information. All right. The other analysis we're going to do is the price versus time. This is really critical, again, to show both buyers and sellers, especially when you have a buyer that's, let's say, from out of town, and their market right now is not so hot. So it's commonplace to offer 10,000 under asking and ask for concessions. Okay. We get that a lot here in the Phoenix area. I mean, the majority of the buyers that come are from out of state, and real estate's just different in their market compared to here. So it's our job to educate them on what our market is, how it works, and how are they going to get the house that they really want. Okay. So we're obviously going to show them the supply and demand to determine what kind of offer we can make, but also we want to show the buyer what's an average house selling for, how close to list price. So that's going to apply to a buyer, but wouldn't that also be true for a seller? A lot of times you'll have a seller ask you, so, if we list at this price, what can I expect to get? Well, what's your answer? Oh, you'll get within a couple percentage. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean 1%, 3%? And depending upon our price point, let's say we're at 300,000. There's a big difference between 1% and 3.5%, right? A significant difference. So you got to have some accurate data to give them to explain what you're saying, right? Our job is to take the market, consolidate it into some data, and then educate the client on what this information means, okay? So this analysis we're going to do with the same market area, with the same price points, we're going to break down all of the sold properties in that geographical area we're going to pull that have sold over the last 6 months. But we're going to take all those properties and we're going to divide them up into how long were they on the market. 0 to 30 days, 31 to 60, so on and so forth in 30-day increments. Okay. Typically what you're going to find is this. There's more houses sold, more units sold within 0 to 30 days. They usually sell for closer to list price to sales price percentage. Fewer of the ones that have sold had a price reduction, and the average price reduction is small. So what you'll notice is as you go out in time, there's fewer and fewer properties that have sold. Typically, the list price to sales price goes down, and the number of price reduced of the ones that did sell goes up. So for instance, that's why I put the percentage here. Here's how many properties sold in those time frames, right? This one here shows us how many of those ones that sold had a price reduction. And typically you'll see a trend. So here only 15% had a price reduction, 37, 69, 100, 94. Okay, so the average price reduction also typically goes up as the property sits on the market. So what you're going to be able to illustrate when this is compiled is that the longer the house sits on the market, you're going to have a price reduction. And then of that, once you have that price reduction, you're still only going to get less than 100% of your list price. So you're actually going to lose a lot of money by letting it sit on the market, trying to get more money. And what this does not quantify to the seller, which is an excellent point you need to bring up in a listing presentation when they want to overprice it, is, let's say you sit on the market for 3.5 months. So we're in this 91 to 120, right? So if you look here, 27 homes sold over the last 6 months during that time frame. All 27 of them had a price reduction, on average of $10,000. And then they only received 99%, which, by the way, is a little high. Usually that's going to be like a 98 or 97%. Well, in a $300,000 house, 3%, that's $9,000, right? So you could be dropping your price 10 grand, and then you're still going to get 9,000 less than that. So really, you're down 19,000. Follow me? Okay, so here's what you can't quantitate on this. They've been on the market 3.5 months before they get an offer, right? How many mortgage payments is that? 3.5. How many utility bills, HOA payments, taxes, insurance, and what else, right? So they're not going to get more than what the house is worth. In fact, it's going to cost them money to overprice it. Because the market's telling us, here's what you're going to get, here's what you could expect, and you're going to spend money holding onto the property all that time. So why don't we just cut to the chase, price it where it needs to be, and get you the most amount of money possible up front. Okay? So you know the old saying goes, the longer the property sits, the less money you get. Like most people know that. This illustrates it. Okay? So that just kind of gives you an overview of what these things are going to look like. Now let's get down to the nitty gritty of the blank page and how do we fill it out. Okay? All right. So again, it doesn't matter if you're doing an open house or you're setting up a listing presentation. The first thing you want to do is identify your market area. Okay? So if I'm doing a listing presentation or an open house in Surprise, let's say, for a property around $250,000, what I want to do is take my sheet and I want to also identify what price ranges do I want to illustrate to people. So if the price point of the subject property, whether that's an open house or a listing presentation, is about $250,000, I want to show some price ranges below that and above that to show contrast, right? The purpose of what we're doing is to tell a story of what the market is. Okay, so in this case, I'm probably going to use these same price points as the example. The 200 to 225, 225 to 250, 250 to 275, 275 to 300, right? So there's a $100,000 spread there. Okay, all right, so for the sake of simplicity, without having to retype all this, I'm just going to copy that and pop it into my blank one here. So these are the, oops, crap. These are the price points I'm going to use. All right. Now, as far as market area, this is where people can get kind of hung up on. It helps to know your geographical area. All right. For example, I work mostly Surprise or West Valley. So in large, with Surprise, there's not a huge difference between, say, Sierra, Montana and Northwest Ranch, or Surprise Farms versus some other community. Now there are some exceptions to that. In Surprise, you've got Marley Park, which is highly sought after, higher price points per square foot, those kinds of things. And then you have Copper Canyon Ranch, which is the acre lots and bigger homes and so forth. But in large, most of Surprise is pretty cookie cutter standard stuff. Okay, so if I'm trying to illustrate what is supply and demand to a buyer, that when we're looking for houses in Surprise, I'm going to use pretty much all of Surprise. Okay. Now, if I was somewhere up around the 67th and Happy Valley, I might use just that geographical area, like Terramar and Stetson Hills, those types of things up in there. You know what I mean? I probably wouldn't go south of Happy Valley.
A lot of customs.
Yeah, there's mostly custom homes, acre lots and those things, right? So you want to understand the geographical boundaries of your market area. So when I'm pulling a supply and demand or price versus time, I'm not looking at a specific subdivision. And the reason is you won't get enough data. Okay? You have to have a lot of units to get an accurate figure. Okay? So, all right. So in Surprise, I'm just going to go right to my map search here, just for the sake of ease for this discussion. Now, I would not recommend putting in your search criteria just the city of Surprise. The reason is you've got Sun City Grand, right? That's considered Surprise. Now you could combat that and say, well, I'll just select no adult community. Well, what if it's mismarked? You're still going to pull up that data, okay? The other thing that some people don't know about Surprise is you have Old Town Surprise, which is, let's see, Thunderbird. Yeah, you're right in this area. I got a duplex over there. You don't want to use that data, okay? Also, you've got this little sliver here, and then there's another little pocket over here of Surprise. You get some not so desirable. So for the sake of simplicity, I use what I would consider Surprise proper, okay? So my definition of that is going to be basically Dysart and Bell. So take Bell over to Dysart, and I'm going to go down to Peoria. Okay. If you wanted to get a little more technical, there's a couple other little slivers of Surprise. You've got Kingswood Park here. Careful not to cross reams because then you're in Sun City Grand. You have Bell West Ranch right here. Careful not to cross over Cotton or you get Happy Trails and Sun City Grand. And then Bell Point right there. But you got to be careful there too because you're going to hit Traditions if you don't know where the cutoff is. Now, truth be told, you don't even need to include too much of those little slivers. The Surprise proper will give you plenty of data to get an accurate description of what the market's doing in the Surprise. Okay. All right. So we've identified our price points and we've identified our geographical area. All right. So now the next thing on the sheet is going to be I need to figure out my active, pending, ratio, the rest of the data. Right. So starting from the top down on the search criteria, we're going to take active and then all of the different pendings. So the CCBS, UCB, and pending. Okay. We're going to consider these three groups here, the CCBS, UCB, and pending, all as pending. They have an offer. They're under contract. Okay. All right. Now the only other criteria I'm going to add in is our price point. So we're going to start with 200 to 224,999. Okay. You can put in single family detached if you're doing a large area that you know there's condos and townhomes that exist in that area. Okay. Guys, outside of that, no other criteria.
Not even year. Like
Not
15 year.
nothing. Because again, we're only looking at supply and demand of the market. We only want to get into specific criteria when we're looking at comparables. Okay. So that's the difference between the two analyses. One shows us what the market's doing. Another one identifies what is a particular property worth. Okay. All right. So that's the only data I'm using. Geographical, status, and price. Okay. All right. So we have our results here. There's a ton of them, 122. So I'm going to go view results. And then I'm going to go right to CMA and hit statistical buyer CMA. All right. Now this screen captures cutting off, but this bracket here is active. CCBS, UCB, pending, and then overall. Okay, so active we have 57 properties, and then for pending we're going to need to add all three of these categories together, right? So we've got I'm not quick on math. That's 15, 3, 4, 5, 65. So 57 active and 65 pending. Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to pop those in here. 57 and 65. Okay. Now, here's how we calculate our ratio. The handout has this on it in case you forget, because you will. The way to calculate this to get our ratio is you take the number of pending and you divide it by the total of the two. So we're going to add these two together, which was 122, right? If we look at here, our overall 122. Okay. So we take the pending, which is 65 divided by 122. And that gives us a 53.27. We're always going to round up, right? And this, or we're going to round the number. You move the decimal point over 2 places, so we have a 53% ratio. Make sense? Okay. So we put in 53%. So what's our market? Seller's market. If I can type. Okay. So now we just need the overall days on market, square footage, active days on market, pending days on market. Okay. So going back to our analysis here, the average square footage, if we look at the overall, go to square footage, 1849, right? Because we got the low, average, high. We want the average, 1849. The average days on market overall is 40. Now here's where it gets a little sticky. So we wanted to know what's the average pending days on market, right? Well, we have 3 categories here. And for CCBS, it's 38 days. For UCB, it's 59 days. And 27 days for pending, right? Okay, so without having to add up each and every single one of these to get a true average, here's what I do. It's a little bit of a shortcut, but I think it's the most accurate other than, you know, counting through all 67 or 65 of those properties. Here's how these statuses work. For CCBS and UCB, when you change the status from active to one of those statuses, the days on market clock keeps ticking. So if you've been under contract for 20 days and you were on the market 20 days, you're going to show 40 days. Well, does that mean it took you 40 days to get an offer? No. So it's not accurate, right? So I just go right to the pending, because once you put a property from active status into pending status, the clock stops. So in my opinion, that's the most accurate. And in this category, it would be 27 days. Okay. Now, if we use 27 as an average days on market for pending, let's look at the overall average was 40 and the active was 41. That means that this number here is not going to be very accurate, the overall, because that's taking into consideration these 59 and that 38 average. So you have a little bit of a discrepancy there. Okay. Depending upon how big it is, you could do a couple different things. You could take this 59 and 27 and average that out. I would probably just go with 40 being the overall, 41 being for active, and 27 for pending. That's what I would stick with. Again, otherwise you're going to have to go through every single one of these, add them all up, and divide by how many there are. And I don't know about you, but I don't have the time for that. Okay, so for the sake of simplicity, we're going to get close enough. Okay. All right, so 1849 was the average square footage. Days on market was 40. Active days on market average was 41 and 27 for pending. Okay. So that's it. We've got our first row done. All right. So that seems like a lot of information to get started, but really once you get into this, you're going to see that this is going to go in like just a couple minutes. So now the next thing we need to do is 225 to 249.999, right? So go back to our search. We'll get rid of this one. We don't need it anymore. We're going to edit and just change our price point. 225 to 249.999. 150. Usually there's less properties as you go up in price. Okay, so we've got 80 active, which means we have 70 pending. Holy moly, that's a lot. So let's go 80 active, 70 pending. What's the ratio? Pending divided by total, right? Okay, so we have our ratio, 47%. So now we need to fill in the average days on market, square footage, ADOM and PDOM. Okay, so if we go back to our CMA, overall days on market is 52, active is 65, and if we look at pending, it's only 25 days. Okay, so I'm going to use that 52, 65, 25. So we go here. 52, 65, 25, is that what it was? 5, okay. And then average square footage, if we look at our average, 2,083. So, 2,083, there we go. Okay, so done with that row. Now we're just going to change our price. Go to edit search. Change that 250 to 274.999 and 92. Don't always take this number here for what it says, because a lot of times when you click on that, there's a different number of results that actually pop up. Sometimes it stays the same. So we've got our 92, go to CMA. All right, so we've got 57 active and 35 pending. So 57 and 35. And then the ratio is going to be pending divided by total. Okay, so the equation was 35 divided by, what was the overall? 92. So 35 divided by 92 is 38%. So go back, 38%. Is still a seller's market. little weaker, but nonetheless, still a seller's market. And I'm going to grab the square footage, 2377, 56 days on market, 2377. And 56, was it? Oops. 61 days on market for the average and 38 for the pending. Okay, last bracket. Get rid of that. I'm going to edit the price point. So 275 to round it up to 300. It's our last bracket. 94 results. See, now it says 0. Oops, that's why. $94. Having a lot of technical difficulties today. Okay, here we go. 56 active and 38 pending. 56, 38. So 38 divided by, is it 90, 94? More technical difficulties. Okay, so our ratio was 38 divided by 94. 38 divided by 94 is 40.4, so we're going to round that down, 40%. Seller's market. And average days on market, 71. 86 for active, 45 for pending. So 71, 86, 45. 71, 86, was it 45? Okay, and then we just need square footage, 2624. All right, so we've got the top part done. So somebody says, how's the market here in Surprise? Well, it's great. What price point are you looking? Well, somewhere between 200 and 300. Well, here you go. So now you can illustrate what these ratios are. And for the most part in Surprise, it's a seller's market. So you see, when someone says, how's the market, you say, great, that doesn't communicate anything other than, I really don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and I'm just giving you an answer that sounds favorable. You know what I mean? So another question would be, it's a great market, depending upon if you're looking to buy or sell. If you're looking to buy, well, not so much, because you're going to have to be really competitive with your offer. If you're looking to sell, you're going to get top dollar and sell it in a short amount of time. So it depends. What are you looking to accomplish? Could that be a good segue into finding out what they're looking to do? Yeah. Instead of, how's the market? Oh, it's great. What do you think about this heat? You know, it's going nowhere, right? So what you'll typically see when you do these analysis, and by the way, whether you're doing an open house or not, whether you have a listing appointment or not, whether you have a buyer consultation or not, I would seriously pull this information no less than once a week in your specific market area that you like to specialize in. Why would we do that? Well, it keeps us in tune to what's really going on. So if we're at the grocery store or we're at a party or whatever the case is, and someone says, oh, you're a realtor, how's the market? You can actually have some data to share with them because you look at it every single week. Okay, so I would constantly stay in flow with this analysis for your area that you like to specialize in, just to keep a pulse on what's going on. Okay, all right. So that takes care of the top half. Also, what you're going to see is typically as you go up in price, this ratio here will start to go down. That's very simple. It's because there's fewer buyers in the higher price points. So we would expect to see that. Very rarely do you see a significant increase in ratio, like small ratio in a smaller price point and then a high ratio in the higher price point. Does it happen? On occasion. It's extremely rare, And typically it's because you don't have a lot of data. Like for instance, this 275 to 300. Let's say we had 1 active and 2 pending. Well, technically that would be a 66% ratio, 2 divided by 3, right? Does that really mean it's that strong of a market? Not necessarily, because there's only 3 units of data to pull from. So the rule of thumb is you want at least 10 units between active and pending combined to have any sort of semi-accurate kind of data. Okay? All right. So absorption rate, this bottom section here, we're going to cheat, kind of, take all that data there, copy it, paste it right in. It's the same data. Okay. So how we figure the rate or months of supply and days of supply is this. So up here, the ratio was pending divided by the total, right? Well, down here, it's going to be the opposite. We're going to take the total divided by pending, okay? So let's see here. Oop, almost did it again. Let's hit that escape button. So we had 57 plus 65. 122 divided by the pending of 65 is 1.87, so I'm going to round that to 1.9. 1.9, and then we're going to take that number to find the days of supply. We're going to take 1.9 and we're going to times it by 30, right? On average 30 days in a month. This gives us 57. So there's 1.9 months of supply in this price point, or 57 days of supply. Okay? Just moving on down. Oh, see, I keep on hitting that button. 150 divided by 70 is 2.14. We're going to round that to 2.1 times 30. Be 33, is it? Excuse me, 63. Yeah, it's time for lunch. Okay. Next bracket is going to be 57 plus 35. 92 divided by 35 is 2.6. Oops. .6 times 30, 78. What a hot market we have right now. Okay, 56 plus 38 is 94 divided by 38, which is our pending, gives us 2.47, so we're going to round that up to 2.5. 2.5. 75 days. Okay, so all in all, properties are moving really fast in that 100,000 spread. Okay, so does that make sense now? You can actually educate somebody on what that specific market is doing, how good or not so good the market is with just that analysis. And again, I mean, think about what we went through to set it up. We selected a geographical area, we identified our price points, and that's it. So you should get to the point where that entire process right there takes you literally 5 minutes to input all that data. It'll become that fast. I mean, it took us a lot longer to get there, but that was just because of the explanation. Okay, so that's the supply versus demand analysis, the market trend analysis. All right, so the next one we're going to look at is going to be that price versus time. Okay, so very simple. You want to keep the same search that you had in the MLS. What we're going to change now, you want to keep the same geographical area. So the only thing we're going to change is we're going to open it up. This, for instance, this analysis here we used was 200 to 300,000, right? So we're going to use that same spread, 200 to 300,000. So we're going to also update our status because we only want closed properties, and we want closed properties over the last 6 months. Okay, so 182 days. Adjust our price point to be 200 to 300,000. Now, the only criteria we're going to add here is, if we look on our thing here, is how long were they on the market, right? That's how we're going to segregate the data. So we're going to go to add a search field and type in agent and select the first one that comes up, the agent days on market. Okay, so we're going to take all the sold data in our geographical area between 200,000 and 300,000, all those homes that have sold over the last 6 months, and break them up into how long were they on the market. So the first bracket is the 0 to 30 days. Okay, there we go, 246. Okay, so what we're going to do with those is hit CMA, Statistical Buyer CMA. And this statistical CMA is going to give us the average list price to sales price. Okay, so there was 246 houses in Surprise that sold over the last 6 months that were on the market 30 days or less. And of those, they received an average of 99% list price to sales price, right? So the middle column is the average. And then we just want to go over to the row that says sale to list price. Okay, so if we go to our, I'm going to close this one out for the sake of ease, and that one. All right, so we go to our 0 to 30. They sold for 99%, and there was 246 houses that sold. Okay, now what I want to know is how many of those 246 had a price reduction, and what was the average price reduction, if any. Okay, so here's how we find that. We go back to, get rid of our CMA. We go back to our results. If you go over here to compare, just click on that. Give it a second. It's going to come up with 26 had a price reduction. And then if you look at this top row here, there's the average reduction. Go over to price change right here, right there, $1,657. Okay, so 26 reduced their price, on average $1,657. Was it 57? 26, 1657. Oh, I want that out here actually. 26. Okay, now what I like to do is, again, put in the percentage. What percentage is how many reduced of how many actually sold? Because what we're going to show is a trend that the longer they sit on the market, more of the houses that actually did sell had a price reduction. Okay, it's just furthering our story, if you will. So we'll take 26 divided by 246, 10%. So only 10% dropped their price on average, not even 1%. Okay, pretty good numbers. All right, so that's it per column. So all we need to do now is just kind of rinse and repeat. Edit the search, and the only thing we're going to edit is how long were they on the market. So we'll scroll all the way down to our agent days on market. Now we'll go 31 to 60. 212. Still a lot of sales, not as much as how many sold within 30 days on the market. Go back to CMA to get our list price to sales price. Okay, list price to sales price staying strong at 99%. So 212 sold on average, 99%. Now we want to see how many reduced and what was the average. So go back to compare. Sometimes it takes the screen a second, so just be a little patient. So look at that, 72 had a price reduction, almost 3 times as many. And the average price reduction shot up to $6,094. A big difference. So 72. And it was 6,094. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So 72 divided by 212. 33.9, so 34% had a price reduction. It's a big difference. Okay. Now again, just rinse and repeat. Go to the next bracket. Edit search. So now we're going to do 61 to 90 days. 111 houses, almost 100 less sold. That's significant. Again, what we're going to illustrate by the time we're done putting all this data is what is the trend. So you can accurately illustrate what you're communicating to the seller, which is price the property right from day one because you're going to get more money for the house versus overpricing it and waiting on the market because you're going to have to bring it down anyways. Okay. All right. 111 sold, average of 99%. Staying strong there. Okay. Now, how many of those had a price reduction? 83, and the price reduction went up 84.29. So 83 divided by 111, 74.7, so 75%. So you can already start to see from 0 to 30 days, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, how many sell go down, how many of those that did sell had a price reduction goes up significantly, and the price reduction goes up significantly. So it's pretty simple to illustrate what our point is. All right, edit search. We go 91 to 120. $63. Keeps dropping and dropping, which is typical, by the way. CMA for our list price at sales price, which went down 1 more percent to 98, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're at 250,000, 1%, that's $2,500. I mean, that's something. Could be 2 mortgage payments. Okay. So we were at 98%, and 49 changed their price on average of $99.73. And 49 divided by 63, 77.7, so 78%. So the number that have a price reduction keeps going up. The biggest key to this is not necessarily memorizing how to pull the data, because the more you do that, the easier it's going to get and the faster you're going to get at it. The challenge comes in explaining this to somebody. That's the part that's going to take effort. So I strongly recommend you pull this data for your market area and then go explain it to somebody. Explain it to me. Explain it to another agent on the team. Explain it to your honey, whatever. Make the mistakes now so that when you're in front of a client, you're much more confident in what you're saying and you're able to answer questions. Because when you explain it to somebody that's another agent or your honey, they may ask you questions. And I would rather get tripped up with people that I know and look dumb there than when I'm in front of a prospective seller trying to earn their business, right? So practice is going to be critical with this. Okay, 36 sold. And average list price is sales price, 98%, staying pretty high. And
So, do you think it's staying pretty high because it is a seller's market? If it had been a buyer's market, it would have dropped like 10%.
yeah, exactly. So in a stronger seller's market, some sellers will just wait for the market to come up to them, knowing that they're going to make some price reductions as we're seeing. But once they drop their price to market value, then they're getting an offer. And the offer is pretty close to list price because their list price is finally in alignment with what market value is. Because they were overpriced to begin with. Absolutely. Okay. So 30 changed their price on average $13,321. That's significant. So you're going to drop your price $13,000. Then of your new list price, you're only going to get 98% of that. So there's another 2%. And you made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 mortgage payments. 5 months on the market plus a 30-day close. So how much money did you really lose? Why didn't you just price it right from day one? Like these 246 people here. Okay. Okay. 30 had a price reduction. Is that right? So 30 divided by 36, 83.3, so 83%. Okay, next bracket. 151 to 180, 24. 99%. Wow. Usually the list price to sales price, as you go out in time, starts to dip, and then towards the end it'll go back up. We didn't dip much here, only an extra 1%. Okay, we want our average price reduction. 21 changed their price on average of $74.45. So this is an example of when the price reduction goes down, that's a seller waiting for the market to come up to them, which is fine. Okay, so they only dropped their price by, let's call it $7,500, which is a lot less than $13,300. But again, did you take into consideration mortgage payment and holding costs?
Show your property for 6 months.
Yeah, being uncomfortable with strangers coming through your property, all that kind of stuff. 87.5, so 88%. So what's that worth to you? To not have people coming through your house on a regular basis for 6 months. You know, I wouldn't like that. Okay. Last price bracket. So here's what I do on this one. Since it's on this sheet, it says 181 plus, right? You'll see houses that have been on the market for thousands of days, literally. So I just put in a bunch of 9s because nothing's going to be on the market that long, right? So make sure you have a lot of 9s in there. Okay, 38. Those are some stubborn people really waiting on the market. Don't mention your client's name. It's being recorded. Just kidding. All right, 99%. So 38 sold. For 99%, let's see what their average price reduction was. $31 for $10,472. Wait, how many? 31. Thanks. And 31 divided by 38. 81.5, so we'll round that up to 82%. Okay, there we go. So as you can illustrate to a seller, these are all of the homes that have sold in this geographical area, our market area, over the last 6 months. And as you can clearly see, the longer the house sits on the market, the more price reduction you're going to have, and you're going to get less of an offer amount, plus make all those mortgage payments. So let's price it in alignment with where it needs to be from day one. You have a 2,000 square foot house, you're probably looking somewhere between 2 and 250. So what do the comps say? Well, the comps say about 235. Okay, cool. We might be able to stretch it out to 240, maybe, just because it's a pretty healthy market, right? So that's kind of how this all comes together. So again, I'll stress it one last time. Pull this yourself, look at the data, and explain it to somebody. Yes, you'll probably look stupid because it's your first time ever, but would you rather look stupid in front of one of your peers or in front of a prospect that's getting ready to pay you $10,000, $15,000? I'd say go screw it up in front of somebody that might laugh at you a little bit, but it's not going to cost you anything, right? So there is a handout to this, and the main thing I can say is just practice, practice, practice. You'll get a lot quicker, and you'll be able to explain it a lot more smooth to people, okay? So that's it.